Good morning. Um, I it's been a couple days since I've done a anxiety lesson, so I just wanted to kind of do that for a little bit. A lot of times when you start facing your fears or your addictions or different things like that, it will transfer to something else. For instance, let's say you are afraid of going outside. So you start working on that, and then all of a sudden you start having a problem with fear of sleep, or you start having a fear of driving. So sometimes when you fight that fear, you're gonna find it transfer to another area. It'll feel like you're not getting a one up on the fear, but that is just simply transferring to another area. That's not true. What's happening is, well, let's skip all that and just say this, that the more you face the fear, even though it'll surface in other areas, it is making you more able to deal with it, kind of challenging your your motives behind it, and it is something that will help you in the long run. You just don't get discouraged, and keep in mind that there will be transference. There will be new areas of fear that creep up. Another thing is when you deal with addictions. Let's say, for instance, you're addicted to abusing alcohol. So you drink way too much. So you start trying to deal with that, and so then as you start trying to deal with it, you start smoking more, you start eating more, you start working more, whatever. Now, obviously, it's better to overwork than to overdrink, because overdrinking will kill you, and overworking will just wear you out. So I mean, yeah, okay, absolutely. But the idea is that the root attitude is still there. The still having to do things in excess, having to, and that can oftentimes be due to, well, a psychological kind of issue. Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, when you're a kid, your father maybe didn't validate you. Maybe you feel like you were never accepted. So then you had to try and prove yourself, which came out in, maybe risque behavior, like, over drinking, for instance. And so then, even though you're dealing with the addiction itself, the root of that feeling like you don't belong, like you don't, like you're no good, like you can't do it or whatever, comes out in another area of indulgence or overindulging. What's it called? Excess. Um, for instance, overeating. And so I do want to kind of encourage you, as you're dealing with these kinds of things, if there comes a point when you feel like, I'm not equipped to do this, or I'm not doing a good enough job, or I just can't get the hang of this, check it out. Just get help. That's what counselors are for. I know a lot of people who had to take medication. Now, I've never had to take medication because I didn't want to. If I was dealing with some of the professionals in my area, I probably would have been doing medication, because they have this idea that you can only fix your problems with medication. I don't agree with that. I feel like it's something that slows you down from gaining momentum. I feel like it's something that stops you from uh, dealing with the problem. Now, if you have to do it to just for long enough to get your bearings, that's one thing. But just be careful about start having a drug dependence, especially with dealing with things with like anxiety, because what happens is you have that thing that you cope with. Like, for instance, let's say I have like some kind of a fidget toy, okay, and every time I go anywhere, I got my fidget toy, and that helps me cope with it. But then what happens is you start getting an unnatural dependence on that toy, where if I go outside without it, I can't cope. So I mean, I start going on shutdown, and I can't deal with it. Now, it's okay to have something to help you cope, but remember that there comes a point when it stops being a benefit and it starts being a hindrance. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind. But one of the things that comes out, you'd be surprised how often this comes out, is a fear of sleep. I know, right? Some people are sitting there thinking, wow, I love sleep. Sleep's my only reprieve. Well, when you have anxiety, not so much. When you have anxiety, you wake up during the night with anxiety. You wake up in the morning with anxiety. You go to sleep at night with I mean, it's everywhere. So, if fear is not really that great. I mean, sleep's not really that great if you have anxiety. But one of the areas that oftentimes crops up with anxiety is fear of sleep. And so the first step to overcoming this fear is asking asking yourself just some basic questions. Sometimes we just don't stop to ask the questions. What exactly are you afraid of? With your fear, what is the thing that you are actually afraid of? For some people, it's going to be maybe that feeling of being out of control. For other people, it's going to be the actual concept of being unconscious. For some people, it's going to be maybe you have bad dreams, typically. And so if you find out that very first step, it'll really help. What is it that I'm actually afraid of? This will help you to learn how to deal with it. For instance, if you're afraid of the dreams that you've been having, maybe change your eating habits. Maybe you're eating too late. Maybe you're going to sleep too soon after eating. Maybe your energy drinks or your coffee, maybe that's having an effect on your dreams. Maybe the movies that you're watching or the music that you listen to, maybe these are having effects on your dreams. So if you change things like that, that can help. Let's say, for instance, you're afraid of sleep because you feel like you're out of control. Well, this might be a good opportunity to start dealing with your control issues. Start looking at other areas of your life. Are you controlling with your spouse or partner? Are you, oh my goodness, are you controlling with your situations? Are you controlling with the other situations that you're dealing with? When you face something at work, do you always have to be in control of the project? Do you always have to take control from somebody else? You always have to get your point across. So I mean, it's something where it'll come out in other areas, and you'll start being able to find these little problem areas. So ask yourself that, why are you afraid? Just a few quick things that I have come up with myself that have helped me greatly. Treat it just like you're facing any other fear. When I started facing my fear of sleep, I had it as in its own separate category. Like during the daytime, I could face my fears. If I was afraid of going outside, okay, I'll go outside. If I was afraid of going on a bike ride, I'll go on a bike ride. If I was afraid of this, that, whatever. But then for sleep, I had like this other box. And it was something where I felt trapped. I can't run from it. I can't stay awake for forever. And, whether I want to deal with it or not, here it is. And the thing is, just because I didn't have the option of having to go to sleep or not, doesn't mean that I didn't have the option of treating it just like treating any other fear. I mean, let's say, for instance, I'm afraid of tarantulas. I am afraid of tarantulas. I'm walking down the street, there's a tarantula on the road. I didn't plan for that, it's just there. It's the exact same thing with sleep. Just because you don't like the idea of sleep, you don't want to have to sleep, doesn't mean that you can choose. So treat it like any other fear. What do you do when you're facing other fears? Slow your breathing, first off. It's okay, I'll get through this. Start changing the dialogues that are happening in your head. What are the chances, honestly, that you're going to die in your sleep tonight? I mean, if you're like 20, for instance, you've lived 20 years of your life without dying in your sleep. What are the chances that this is going to be the night? Don't worry about it. Just you have to reach a kind of point where you say, even if that does happen, it's okay. That is a little bit difficult when you're dealing with like death, the fear of death. It's like, no, I don't want to die. It's like, well, okay, if I die, I die. And to have that mentality, it's like, eesh. So, these are just ideas. Treat it just like you're facing any other fear. Another thing is loosen yourself up. Calm yourself down. Do some calming techniques. One thing that people do is they focus on relaxing your muscles in the different areas. Start with your toes, then your feet, and consciously loosen up the area. Then your legs. Breathe. Then loosen your fingers, then your arms. And as you go, you'll start kind of feeling different areas, kind of just relaxing. And then you're distracted, so that'll help. But then also as you do the breathing, that will get your focus on something else too. And these will all help. Another thing, get rid of the idea of a certain time. So it's very common with people who are afraid of sleep to do something like this. I have to go to sleep at this time. Let's say it's 10. Okay, 10's your sleep time. And if you are awake anytime past that, it's like, oh no, there's a complete break in schedule. I'll never get to sleep now. It doesn't matter what time it is. Time is a concept that we use to help us keep track of our days. It doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't. Worst comes to worst, hey, you'll miss out on a little bit of sleep. Nothing real big. Losing out on a little bit of sleep is not going to kill anybody. Okay, it's totally fine. So instead of, oh no, I got to get to sleep, how about, it's all right. It's all right. Let's just lay down, and if I go to sleep, I go to sleep. One thing that helped me when I first started, which I don't necessarily recommend because I'm still trying to get past this little hurdle, is setting alarms. When I first started, I had alarms for 5 or 10 minutes. So that way I would feel like, A, I'm not really going to sleep because the alarm will wake me up. And then B, I won't sleep too long. You know, obviously when you're dealing with fear, it's not really rational a lot of times. So, you know, I did this and it really helped. After the second or third alarm, I'd usually just, once you start going into that dreamy state, you kind of just start loosening up, and then you can get yourself to sleep, you know, just by your body's natural instincts. So there's that. Another thing is, so then after 5 or 10 minutes, I was able to extend that over to 2.5 hours, you know, but then you still have that problem of you have to eventually stop using that alarm, you know, so just some ideas. Here's another thing. Don't try to go to sleep. Just relax. Focus on relaxing. Focus on having your eyes shut. Just focus on breathing. So you don't have to be in it for a task. When you go into sleep with the task, what it does is it tells you, I'm still working. And so you still have your work mindset. You can't go to sleep like it's a task. Learn to just relax. Learn to let go. If you work a very stressful job, that's going to be very difficult. But you have to learn how to just, you know what, this is not my work time. Actually, it's a good habit to get into, just to kind of turn off the work while you are not at work in general. I know that's sometimes a little bit difficult, but it's very much so necessary. Another thing is, don't let relaxation and sleep rule you. Okay, missing out on a couple nights of sleep, missing out on a few hours of sleep, it's okay. You'll get through it. Don't let your whole life be about getting good sleep. When you wake up, get up out of bed, go do something with your day. Don't get to the point where you feel like, oh man, I'm wasting my whole life because sleep is all consuming. Don't let it be all consuming. Don't let your whole life be about pleasure and about sitting down and relaxing all the time. If you relax all the time, your body needs something to fight with, you know. Exercise, get up and do something physical. You know, even if it's just push-ups, just do something. Go on walks. Your body really does try, and it's really built for resistance. If you're not giving any resistance, there's a problem. There's a really big problem right there. But then there's another flip side of that. Don't work too hard. Sometimes we work ourselves so long and for so many hours and for so hard that when we finally get to a place of stopping, we're so tired we can't go to sleep. We can't even loosen up. We can't enjoy life because we're working too much. That's a problem. Your life is more than work. Another thing is, maybe invest in some kind of a white noise machine. They just go in the background. You can get different frequencies and stuff. You know, just something in the back to get sound going. You can use a fan. You know, just something's in the background. Another thing you can do is you can play music. Many options for that. Not just an MP3 player. You can do something on your phone. I tell you what really helps me. Don't judge me for this. On YouTube, I go on and I play SpongeBob videos. SpongeBob is an extremely low stress show. So that's what I do. I try to find low stress shows. Find something that's relaxing, something that's calming. It's not something that's like real action packed. You don't want something like that to go to sleep with. Another thing is you might be on the other side of the spectrum where it's the noise that's bothering you, in which case you can get noise canceling earmuffs. If you don't have money for that, you can use earbuds if you like, used in construction. I think they're just called earbuds, earplugs. If you don't have money for that, you can try wrapping your head with something, like maybe scarves or something. Maybe getting some toilet paper or something and putting it in there and then wrapping with like a scarf or something. Sounds like it'd be a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm sure if you put some thought into it, I'm sure you can figure something out. Then there's the obvious stuff. Make sure your room is clean. Make sure that it's not too hot or not too cold. Make sure that you have the comfortable sheets. Just the basic stuff. Make sure that you're only at your bed for sleep at nighttime. Don't take too many naps during the day. In fact, you should only probably take one nap during the day and not too close to the time that you go to sleep. Because if you take a nap, you won't be able to get to sleep. So, these are just little simple things that we sometimes don't even think about. Watch your caffeine intake. If it's after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you probably shouldn't be having caffeine. Let your body kind of just process through that caffeine. I hope that these are helping you. Okay, some other things. Stay away from the routines. There's some people who will tell you, take a hot bath before you go to sleep. Do this before you go to sleep. Do this. Okay, here's what happens. You start going through those things really rapidly. Okay, I'm going to take my bath now. Okay, I'm going to go exercise now. And it starts getting to be something that riles you up. It's not relaxing you anymore. Another thing is, it makes it where I can't go to sleep unless I have my bath. What are you gonna do if you what are you gonna do if you don't have access to a bath at that moment? You see what I mean? Like, these things, they might sound good, but usually the quick fix kind of stuff is not gonna work. And usually the traditions of I gotta do this before I go to sleep, and I gotta do this before I go to sleep. And it gets to be where it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and you still are not asleep. There's just a certain point where it's just not overly helpful. Another thing is, keep in mind that you've done it before. You've done this before. When you were a baby, for instance, you slept. You slept in your mother's womb. You slept when you were still nursing as a baby. You slept as a toddler. You can get through this. Like, you've done it before. It's not something new. Sometimes we fear that because we don't know how this night of sleep's going to go, but it's something where you've done it before. Another thing is, learn to quiet your thoughts. Don't think about something else, just learn to stop thinking. Where your mind is literally empty, void of thought. This is very difficult to do for some people. It's very possible. You can learn how to do this. It'll take time, it'll take work, but you can get there. You can. If you can't, if you're having too hard of a time with this, or it's not as relaxing as I have implied for you, maybe you just don't like that, then think about something. What I used to do as a kid was I used to have it where I would create these little stories. And so in my head, I would be playing out the story while I'm laying still with my eyes closed. And, after like 5 or 10 minutes, I'd go to sleep. But for some people, that's going to keep you up. So you really have to find out what works for you. Another thing is, write down your to-do list for the next day. Write it down, get it off your head. Don't try to remember all these little things that you got to do tomorrow. Get a piece of paper. Get sticky pads. Write it down on that. Stick it somewhere where you'll see it in the morning, like on top of your phone screen. And then just leave it alone and walk away. And another thing, have a set time for sleep. Don't have it where you go to sleep whenever. Have it where you go to sleep at a certain time. Okay, so like for instance, it's 10 o'clock. This is my time for sleep. And so then lie down and go to sleep. And if you can't get to sleep within like an hour, get up. What I do is I read a little bit. That'll get you tired. Then go back and try again for another 30 minutes. So and eventually you'll go to sleep. Or you can just keep shifting positions. Right side. 15 minutes later, switch to the other side. 15 minutes later, switch to the other side. It gets a little bit difficult if you have indigestion because you're supposed to lie, I think it's on your right side with indigestion. but you can find ways around that too. Sleeping sitting up, sleeping laying down, etc. Um, Also, but when it gets to be in the afternoon, when you're getting closer to your nighttime, uh, learn to stop dreading it. This is something you have to kind of face directly, because in your head you're going to be like, oh no, oh no, oh no, kind of freaking yourself out. Just learn to not do that. You're going to have to find what works for you there. Maybe distraction, maybe something else. I don't know. Um, do some kind of activity that will get you relaxed and calm and tired before sleep that does not involve screens. Screens have blue light on them that they hit your eyes and they actually damage your eyes, but then also they cause your brain to kind of stay awake. You can look online for a more scientific definition of what's happening, but there's no reason to get overly into that now. More of the story being the blue light will keep you up. So do something that doesn't involve screens. Don't fall asleep with movies. Try to fall asleep instead. Well, if you have to do that, but I mean the goal is not to, because it'll just make it harder. Go to sleep with. What I do is I read in the afternoons or in the evenings. That really does help. It'll take up your brain, especially if you have a physically exhausting job and your mind is still awake. It'll kind of calm your mind down. I read Dune. Dune has a lot of like philosophy and stuff in it that really helps if your brain is still active. So those are just some ideas. I hope that some of that helps. I might do some of these again in the future. If you go to my playlist, I have another playlist. I forget what it's called right now, but I actually have another one on there about how to get to sleep. It's more focused on insomnia than on anything else, but still. Also, just a real last thing, keep in mind that if you don't have the right vitamins in your diet, that's going to help to hurt too. Like, for instance, if you're low on iron, you won't sleep very well. So, okay, I hope that this helps. See you guys.